Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Heart Count podcast. I'm Karyn Zwick, and I'm joined by my partner, Christina Foxwell. Today, we're tackling something that every leader struggles with. How do we let go and find freedom in leadership?
Wow, isn't that a wonderful question? Hello, everybody. That is so right. I think as HR leaders or people in culture leaders or HR partners, we invest so much of ourselves in that outcome that we really care about the project, the teams, our organizations. And what happens when things don't go our way? Like that is so hard because
It,
sometimes it's true, like some decisions are made that really just conflict with who we are and our vision. What do you think?
absolutely. Well, for sure. I think, letting go just isn't about moving past a decision, right? It's about freeing ourselves emotionally so that we can lead with clarity and resilience.
Yeah,
But that process isn't just one step.
no,
There's there's acceptance, like acknowledging reality as it is. What does that look like? Then you surrender, um, releasing emotional resistance and trusting the process.
yeah,
And finally, letting go. And I know you and I are laughing a little bit about this because it sounds so easy, but it's really not.
it's
And
so
letting go,
hard.
right? Letting go. And that's really the conscious act of freeing
Yeah.
ourselves from the attachment of the outcome. And
Mm.
today, we're going to unpack why this can feel so hard, what tools can help us through it, and how do we just like release the weight of those outcomes that we can't control.
True.
So let's start. Why is letting go so hard, Christina? As leaders, we pour so much of ourselves into our work, our time, our energy, our values, and even our identity. And I can really resonate with that, right?
Mm.
And when decisions are made that we don't always agree with, it was incredibly difficult for me not to take some of them personally.
You know, it's true. And I think it's the wrestle. I've been there. I still go there. It's the wrestle. I have frustration, guilt, resentment, and it's over decisions that don't always align with what I believe is right. And we find that
Mm.
we consult um, in the human capital space, and
Yep.
sometimes it just feels like that surrender means I'm betraying my values by not pushing harder for what I believe is the better outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And that is tough.
It really is. And I've experienced this in many different ways.
Mm.
Um, I'll share that, one time I had to accept a decision that I didn't agree with, but I had to commit to move forward because I knew it was the best path for the team. Um, Another time, I remember there was where I realized I couldn't reconcile the misalignment between what the organization, what their goal was, and my values.
Yeah.
And that was really tough because I just couldn't sit in that space and be okay with it. So I made the decision to leave.
That is powerful because over the last 13 years of running this practice, we have walked out of some projects where we have recognized what we're teaching and what we believe and what they are trying to do and some of the values and the ways of working is so misaligned that we had to step away. And that was choosing to accept and commit when it's right or walking away when the misalignment is way too big. And then I think that takes awareness, because you have to be able to be aware of when you're stuck. Because if you are wrestling in a space where you should be supporting, it is damaging both to the organization, to the people, as well as to yourself. And so that awareness takes courage. I mean, you don't always have to walk away. Let's be real.
No, for sure.
But
For
you
sure.
have to get to that place of acceptance.
Yeah. And neither path is easy.
No.
Accepting a decision that conflicts with your values can really feel like letting go a piece of yourself.
Mm.
While on the other spectrum, it's like deciding to leave means walking away from something that you've totally invested deeply in. And having experienced both of those situations, I really felt that maybe I didn't recognize it then, but I do recognize it now, that I was choosing to honor my authenticity in those situations. And that's the challenge. Letting go forced me to ask myself deeper questions about who I was, what was most important to me, and what I was going to do with that information.
I think that is mic drop moments in our life. That moment when we recognize that if we don't let go, the emotional toil builds up so quickly. You and I have both been through a program that we did a few years ago where they had the hand on the hot plate, right? And we sit in that frustration and that pain. And the more we sit there, it turns into guilt. Then guilt turns into shame. And then that unresolved tension manifests as stress responses in my body. My shoulder's always tight. I feel exhausted. There's long-term health issues. We know there's gut health issues. There is heart conditions. There is stress, anxiety, high blood pressure. I mean, I can go on. Letting go is as important for our well-being as it is for our leadership. And it is not an act of giving up. It's an act of navigating what is. Did I position it? Okay?
For sure. I mean, letting go isn't just about making peace with the decision. It's about managing the emotions that come up with it. And that's, I really feel like what's helped me in terms of kind of processing those emotions is that whole thing about acceptance and commitment. And I know that, well, what is that? It's an idea. It's a proven framework that we use that helps us navigate difficult emotions, to feel them, label them, and then commit to some sort of meaningful action.
Yeah.
And sometimes even when we're not ready to do it. But it's there, it's a framework. And I know that it's incorporated into a lot of our programs at Ignite. Purpose. And it's there for a reason, because it's an amazing tool.
I love what you're saying, because it is so meaningful, and ACT has freed me from holding on to the stuff that no longer serves me. I want to kind of frame it up like this. 2 key principles of ACT is acceptance and commitment, real commitment. I mean, you walk through it. And I find that sometimes, and you and I have had this conversation, we're not sure what we're accepting. Okay, so if I'm only accepting one part of it, but not what I should be, I'll come back to that situation. Did you know that?
Yes. Yeah, it doesn't, you don't let it go just because you choose not to accept a piece of it.
Yeah, like, I'll just take that piece and accept it because that's that. But it's how we frame up the acceptance. So acceptance is acknowledging the emotions instead of fighting them. And I love this. We were speaking to a group of leaders this last week, and it is recognizing that I'm accepting how I am feeling. Commitment is about making the choices that are rooted in my values regarding how uncomfortable the emotion, regardless of really how uncomfortable my emotions are. And that is hard. And of course, we always help people through that journey. But, I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I think acceptance is the hardest. I know for me, my instinct is always to resist them or suppress them or rationalize them away. Oh, like I don't have to worry about this right now because I'm just going to leave it there. So when I found that I fought them, they became stronger. And, have you ever tried to force yourself when you're frustrated and you're angry and sad and you just end up feeling worse because you get into that cycle? And reason I say that is because I've actually experienced both, where I've thought I was just cycling, knew I was cycling, and then when I accepted and how that cycle changed or that pattern changed.
Now that,
so if
yeah,
right, so if we're resisting it, it's amplifying our suffering. And I've seen it in how other people process emotions that way, but I've also experienced it.
these are the cycles we talk about in our lives, right? I want to just quickly use an example slightly outside of everything but it links to this. I had a leader that was coaching, and she said to me, the feedback I got from my leader, from my executive this week, is the same feedback that they gave me in kindergarten about me. And I hate getting this feedback. And I looked at her and I said, well, what can we explore about this feedback that might be holding you back? Because there's something that is coming up for you in a certain situation that you respond to, which is not creating the pathway that you want in your life. I'm going to use another analogy. When I don't accept, I'm like trying to hold down one of those big beach balls. You know how you can float on them in a pool, right? They just pop up, like, and then they go out the water somewhere else, right? And they come up with force. Like the more you try and squash it down, the more it has to come back up, right? Acknowledging my emotions is so important, because it could look completely different, but it's allowing that feeling to exist without letting them take over. I used an example earlier. I got overwhelmed in a shopping mall with my 80-year-old mom this weekend, and the feeling that I was experiencing, I was just trapped in that emotion of like, what do I do? And then all these other emotions popped out, cranky, and I was like, down and I was driving the car, and I said to her, Mom, I want to get curious about what I've just experienced, because I want to accept it so that I can move through it, so that I can have a better day.
And so what happened when you did that?
I had a better day because I realized it was fear. And it was the fear of taking care of my mom, of the big office move that I was trying to navigate, of packing boxes, of feeling tired, and missing my husband terribly. And it was just a combination of everything, and nothing was that big. So I accepted that I can feel a little bit overwhelmed, and then I can say to myself that it's okay, and I can tell my mom I love her, and I can recognize got to the bathroom in time and all these wonderful things. And even if we didn't, it's okay, because I'm okay.
Yeah.
I say that and it's relief.
Those are great examples, and I can feel that change, right? That shift.
But I'll share this with you. Had I not had that moment,
Your day would have been different.
awful. It would have been awful.
Yeah, because it continues on into how you show up for the rest of your day. And we get to choose that.
Thank you.
We get to choose.
It's the power of choice. It's the power of presence. It's the power of awareness. It is recognizing what our emotions are teaching us about what we're not accepting.
Yeah. So put a challenge out to our listeners. Think of something that you're holding on to. Maybe it's a frustration. Maybe it's a disappointment. Or maybe you're resisting some changes within your organization. And instead of pushing it away, what happens if you just name it, sit with it?
Yeah.
This feeling is here. It's making me feel anxious or uncomfortable. I don't like it, but I don't have to fight it.
Yeah.
And just notice it and take a breath.
So beautiful. So beautiful.
So, what about detachment?
Mm.
How does this come into play?
Mm.
I feel it doesn't mean that we're disengaging. It means that we're letting go of emotional attachment outcomes, the attachment to outcomes.
Yeah.
It's about shifting.
That
right?
you said. Yeah.
Letting go of the emotional attachment to the outcome. Let's sit with that for a minute. That one's a real tough one for me, Christina. But I know that, but I've recognized when I was able to do that, what a difference it made. And it's really about shifting the focus from beyond what's beyond my control to what's within my influence. And I think that shift is where the freedom begins. Because you do feel that lighter. Just like you explained in the examples you shared, something just lifts, right?
And I want to add something in here. When I recognize that the emotions I'm experiencing are often based on my thoughts of worth and self-worth that are attaching me to the outcome. That's
right. So what story am I telling myself if this outcome is not going to be the outcome that everybody else is pushing towards? Is that going to define who I am?
Thank you.
How worthy I am?
Thank you.
So we need to kind of think about what story is attached to that outcome, not just the emotion.
Because the story drives the emotion, but the emotion is telling us there's a story. The emotion is my traffic light. So I have to accept the emotion I'm feeling, because it is, and then I have to find the story I'm telling myself that's driving the emotion and accept the story is not, accept by disentangling it, accepting that that story is not always the full truth. And I can retell that story, because if I accept that my worth is exchanging for the outcome, I will feel that that emotional thing will never actually release.
It's true.
It's true. It is so true. And that's the only time I can surrender. Now, I remember how sitting with my trauma therapist, and he walked in and he said, "What do you want?" I said, "I want peace." That's where I came across acceptance commit therapy. Thank you, Dr. Robbie Fullerton. Thank you, Dr. Jill Stoddard. You changed my life. Surrender isn't giving up. It's about choosing to stop fighting battles that drain my energy and don't align with my values. I can't control this, but I can control how I respond. I can understand what I'm thinking. I can retell the story. And with that shift, I can shift my clarity and I can move forward with strength and gravity. If I don't link those elements, I cannot find acceptance. And surrender for me is walking into acceptance. I have a somatic activity in our office. My husband does it with me now too. God, I love him. It's lying on the carpet on my back, and I surrender to what is. I surrender to the emotion. I'm surrendering to accept the emotion, and then I'm trying to understand what am I telling myself that's driving it, and what do I have to accept there, and how do I retell it?
I love how you've attached an action to surrendering, because sometimes to just say I'm surrendering. So, you know how it is where you drop a rock into the river and there's a ripple. They actually say that there's something to be said about physically letting go, physically surrendering it. So whatever that looks like for you, that's what works for you. For somebody else,
Could be
it
something.
might be something else.
I'll share something which sounds weird, but by now you can probably hear I'm a little bit weird. I was working in this big project, Karyn, as helping them with transformation in people, and it was really hairy. And I had to go in there and work with some challenging people's emotions, and to try and help navigate. And it was hard for me because I had to surrender my own story, values, all of that stuff we've just spoken about, so that I could go in with an open heart. I actually sat in the car in the morning with my arms up, saying, I surrender. I surrendered to not walking with fear today, not walking with my stuff, that I walk in with a peaceful mind, that I'm not going to have fear drive me. I had to do that as a statement, so that I could not carry my own discomfort, so that I could surrender that before I walked in, to be comfortable in discomfort. What do you think?
Yeah, I could relate to that. I was thinking about when my boys left home and I had to accept that we were empty nesters.
Mm.
And just using that and how I navigated that space and what I needed to let go. Um, and, the emotions that came with it, and being able to say that it's okay, right? That they had to fly, and that this was now time for me. So, what did I have to let go? It was really just to let go that they are adults and they're on their own and they're happy and they're doing well. And, accepting that it was a great ride, right? But I think, when I finally surrendered and realized that,
Mm.
it allowed me not to carry that weight or to feel bad about being in that space. And
That,
it allowed me to focus on really mattered. And that was me.
that is big.
So, yeah. So what about you? What's one thing that, um,
Mm.
you're resisting, something you're holding out on fear or frustration or habit, that you're ready to surrender today?
Absolutely. We would love you to take a moment to reflect on this. Why not write it down? Share it in our community space. Letting go isn't about losing or winning. It's about creating space for something better.
Yeah. Sometimes I think we forget that.
Do we want to hold on, want to hold on? And then when we release, it is the door that opens. So it's
Yeah. And sometimes even just having that reflection to be able to see it. Yeah.
Love it.
So this is great, Christina. As always, you and I um, have so much fun together in these podcasts. Um, so next time, we're exploring leadership, authenticity, and vulnerability. And this is near and dear to my heart. Um, because if letting go is hard, not being fully seen as a leader is even harder.
Yeah.
And how do we embrace authenticity? How does it make us stronger instead of weaker? And until then, take care. Christina, any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Just be gracious with yourself. And when you wrestle, know there's an answer. We loved hanging out with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. And until then, take care. And we'll see you next time on the Heart
Bye.
Counts podcast. Bye now.